Hi, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Carolyn Talks, the podcast / YouTube channel where I, your host, Carolyn Hines, speak to film creatives about their work, the industry, and what inspires them. And today, for another episode for the 2022 Sundance Film Festival, I am joined by writer and director Stephen Kang to talk about his short film, Breathe, which premiered at the festival. And before we get into the film, as usual, I'd like to invite my guests to speak a bit about how they got into filmmaking and what inspires them. So, Stephen, can you just say a bit about yourself?
Hi, I'm Stephen. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
And how do I get into the filmmaking? I've been making film from the art school, and I've been in art school. There's no, no one actually does the narrative stuff but me, myself. So that was super interesting. I was always interested in narrative, the storyline. So yeah, with some strange images. So I've been keep making that stuff, and then I'm here.
So how long have you been doing film? So how long have you been making films then?
It's been about 10 years. But it's mostly short films and some TV commercials and that kind of stuff.
And for Breathe is very it's different in that it's narrative, but there's so much of the story comes with what happens more than what the characters say. And for this one, I think it deals a lot, to me, a lot with religion. And I would also say colonialism and a little bit of racism as well, because the main characters, this is what I'm getting from it. The main character, G, she and her dad, Paul, they're Korean and they live in New Zealand. But I'm guessing that Paul is an immigrant, whereas G was born in New Zealand. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Yes. And I like good horror film, like a good horror film, but you're right. I was more interested in the drama side of that story, the relationship between the father and daughter, and the religion is one part. They need to overcome their relationship, but this crazy thing happens with the Bible and blood and and some exorcism. So yeah,
the exorcism. It was not what I was expecting, because as when she started, because it starts off fairly innocuous. Like she's you hear her praying, and I'm like, okay, so she's saying a regular prayer, and then she comes out and she puts the glass of ice water on the table. And I will admit, I watched this film. It was late. It was dark. And this ice block moved. And this ice block, I was like, wait. I'm like, what's going on with this glass of ice water? And then she goes into the room and you realize that she's preparing to say an exorcism, because the prayer she's saying is very specific. And for a lot of people, if they've grown up reading the Bible and going to church, especially very conservative churches, there's a specific way that you pray when you're doing not necessarily exorcism, but when you're doing healing ceremonies, or if you're praying for, deliver, you go to deliverance services and that kind of stuff, which I've gone to. And I've gone to at home in the Caribbean, we call them crusades, but there's a very specific way you say the prayers. When she was doing it, I'm like, okay, I see where this is going. So I want you to start talking a bit about just using the act of exorcism as the basis for your story, because it is about the father and daughter, which we'll get into. But I just want to talk about using exorcism in particular as the basis for this.
Yeah, I like to play with those the symbolism, and you're right. The J is saying all the healing prayers, but actually, I quite like that about she's actually saying all these healing prayers, but what she needs the most is healing between herself and her dad. So there's two quite different images, and I really want to explore that as well. So I took those healing prayers and doing crazy things, but at the same time she needs to kind of break free from all these Catholic symbolism and, kind of suppress that she might feel from it.
And like as I mentioned before, like so Paul, he's an immigrant, and I know in South Korea, like Catholicism is actually a pretty big religion there. Like it has a pretty large denomination. So for you, is that like part into your background personally? Because I know for a lot of filmmakers that you do draw a lot from your own personal background. And did you use that as the reason for using Catholicism in this aspect of the film?
Yeah, for sure. Because my whole family came to New Zealand when I was like 13. And at that time, there weren't many Korean community in New Zealand. And first thing my family did was, go to church, because we don't have any community here. And it's the easiest thing you can connect with another, Korean in this country. And that's what they did. And that's why I got into all this Catholic and and starting to go to church. So that was my experience. And I think that's super important for the older immigrant family, but at the same time, sometimes this community also fractured as well. If you are into that too deeply, So I mean, although the short film doesn't tap into that, but I want to say a little bit about it, because if you are so getting too deep into that Catholicism and all this church, the family can fracture.
I understand it completely, because like when my sister and I moved to Canada, we were adults, we were 29, but the first thing we did, like we moved to Canada, it was a Thursday, and by the Saturday Sabbath, because we were Seventh-day Adventists, we went to church. And we went to church because that was where we could find the most amount of Bajans and other people in the community. And that's how we learned to navigate like Canadian culture and West Indian culture as immigrants, because like when you're an immigrant, like you do need to find a community, and it can be extra hard if you don't have one. So like for a lot of people, church is the way to get that done. And I do agree with you about it can cause fractures in the relationships, because like I think especially between parents and teenagers, like I've seen it for myself, where like when you immigrate as a teenager to an adult, it's like completely different experiences. Like for a teenager, they're just like excited to be in this new country, but then they also have their own struggles to deal with, like in school and making friends and being able to fit in, especially if you're a person of color and you're coming to a country where people who are people of color, including the indigenous people like the Maori and the Aborigine, they themselves are ostracized by the white community as well. And it's just like, it's hard to fit in, but it's just like you have to do your best.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's exactly what I felt as well. I mean, my parents is happy to involve, all this church community and find all this Korean community. But for me, I just want to go out and play with, with your friends and stuff. So I think that's kind of experience sort of sip into these short films as well, because, Jay's character wants to go out and play with her friends, but she has to do this certain thing. But because they need money, also, dad's sort of forcing her to do it. But will this relationship gonna go on like that? We don't know, because she's growing up, and at one point, the dad need to sort of let her go. So yeah, I want to kind of explore that idea as well.
Yeah, you do, and I think you do it in a very subtle way. Like for Jay, like obviously you can tell she's a teenager, but like you talked about her wanting to play with her friends, and I think it's a very smart way that you do it. Where when she's performing the exorcism, she wears this white dress, but she wears the dress over her regular clothes, like just like what I would call like her play clothes, and it's just like, and that's what we call them out. We call them play clothes. Yeah, so like we have clothes for play out church. school.
Yeah,
You don't mix them. But
that's
like
great.
she's her play clothes, and when she has to do the exorcism, when her dad calls her, she puts on this white dress, and she's basically like performing, this ceremony. And like when she does that, it's like her dad doesn't want to see that she's a kid, that she wants to live the life of a kid. And then the people that come to her for the ceremony, and in this case it's a woman, Helen, and her mom, they're not seeing this child, they're just seeing this person that has to do this thing that they need. And one of the things that really struck me is like Helen, because she is possessed, she's cursing at Jay, right? And she's calling her
Yeah.
all these names and saying these extremely awful things. And her dad is just like, just say the prayer. And I'm like, Dad, Paul, you're not gonna do anything. Like if it was me, I'd be like, you're not gonna be cursing at my daughter. You need to get up, take your demon, and go outside. But
Yeah.
so like, when
But
you
she's sick.
talk a bit about that part of it, because like you don't have a lot of like dialogue to tell you what's going on, but a lot of it happens in like the expressions. And I think the actress Gloria, who plays Jay, she does a very good job of showing like she's struggling to do this thing. She has to be professional, but you can tell she doesn't want to be there.
Yeah, I mean, Jay is great. The Gloria, because yeah, she know how to play with the constraint emotion, and yeah, she was great because we saw like close to 50 or 60 kids when we auditioned for that part. Because to be honest, there weren't many Asian kids actor here in New Zealand, because there's no opportunity for them, and B, there's a small number of community here. So, but we reached out to friends and family and try to find these kids. And yeah, Gloria came along, and she was great. She's kind of constrained, and she understands all this pain and disconnect from the family. So yeah, she was great. Also, Helen as well. Like she's a professional actor, but she can do screaming take after take. So because sometimes you can't do that, you can't have that same energy after take, but she can do that. So that was for helpful as well. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so I want to get a bit now into the exorcism itself, because it starts out with, as we mentioned, Jay saying the prayer, but then it transitions into her having to cut herself. And when she does that, it's obvious that it's implied that she, like, this is something that is not to be done. Like her father doesn't approve of it. And I don't want to ask you about that, because I was thinking, why would this be a problem if it's a part of performing exorcism? But then I started to think maybe she has way more power than we first think. Like she is extremely powerful, which comes through in the end. I'm not going to completely spoil it, but like it's implied that she's an extremely powerful young woman.
Yeah, I want to play this duality a little bit, because is she really have this power or not? If her dad really believe she has power or not. I want to play with that idea. And for me, I don't think her dad knows Jae could do all these things. The dad is trying to just get many customers possible and try to earn the money, right? But Jay has so much potential and powerful, and he doesn't believe that. I think that's something that I thought about, and that's why she's so constrained and try to hide her power as much as possible. And because Dad doesn't believe she's got some potential, he keeps saying that, oh, you just need to stick to the prayer. Otherwise, people will find out that we are not real, and that's his worry. So I want to play that little bit of, whether is it real or is it not real? Or is she has, this power or not? Is she just faking it? So I want to play with this thing.
So I have to ask, so why doesn't Paul work? Or it's like, because I'm wondering if this is the only, no, the reason I ask this is because he's like, okay, we need this to survive. And there's two aspects of that conversation, because he's like, how else are we going to survive in this country? And it first of all made me think, as immigrants, and then as people of color, as Asians in New Zealand, like they are obviously facing some kind of struggle outside the home. But then it also made me think, okay, if you're talking financially, Paul, like, are you not working full time? And why not? So answers.
Yeah, that's kind of throwaway line, but yeah, you're totally right. It opens up a lot of questions, but for me, Paul's sort of relying on this business because it earns him a lot more than, he go out and try to earn, minimum wage or whatever. So he's sort of relying on this business model with his daughter. So I think he's sort of forcing her to do it. So that's why he's saying that, we need this, otherwise, can't survive. So he's gaslighting her a little bit, right? To keep her going. So yeah, I put that line so that, he's not working at all, and he's just doing this business full time.
Right. So and while it could be understood that they need income, I was also just thinking, like, are you not considering the emotional and mental toll this is going to take on your daughter, and also the physical, because like she says she doesn't want to do it, and having like these people like Helen coming in and stressing her out repeatedly, cursing her. I'm just like, this is going to take a toll on your daughter. Why is this also not a concern for you? And then there's another scene where it shows also that the people coming for help, they also don't care about Jay as well, because like Paul is like, are you not going to consider the risk that my daughter is taking? Like, does this mean nothing to you? And all she does is offer money, just like money is the ultimate goal for both Paul and these people, but like no one is considering Jay's feelings and her wants and her needs.
Yeah, I mean that's I specifically generate that because I want Jay to be alone as much as possible. That's so that when she meet her friend, that's the only place that she's comfortable and can smile. Whereas in the house and all these people are just desperate, Paul's desperate, to earn this money, and these people coming in here, those people need help. The Helen, the screaming woman, is sick, so all they care about is trying to get better and get some help. So yeah, I've specifically designed so that she's Jay, our main character, is sort of left alone and like an island. She's just there and she's alone.
She's alone, but it's like the scene with Talia is interesting because it made me wonder if she also has her own special brand of powers, because it seems as though she heals Jay's hand, and she does it out of just earnestness, because she rewraps her hand and she's just like catches the air and she's like, I'm like this is gonna heal you, and Jay doesn't believe her. She's like, at least it could help make you feel better. And then so I want you to talk a bit about that, because now you have two girls in the story who each seem to have their own power. Like, for you as a filmmaker and as a writer, like why would you include this, and like especially exactly why making the story around a girl instead of like perhaps a boy? Because I'm wondering if that has to do a lot with like how the Catholic Church is structured. And then it also made me think of, like, I know like South Korean culture, there's like shamanism, and most shamans are women, right?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, you're on point. I wanna make her friends a little bit magical at the same time. So I talked about kind of duality, what's real and what's not. And is she real? Is she exist? Her Talia, the friends? Maybe it's just imaginary friends. Who knows? But she helps, and she make the cut go away. And maybe it's just inside Jay's head. So I was kind of thinking a bit like that. So it can be a little bit magical and extra interesting.
Yeah, because the way she ran away, I'm like, why would you run if her dad calls? Is like, so like you saying now that she could possibly be an imaginary friend, like, yeah, that makes sense actually. Like the way she just leaves and like hops the fence. I'm like, yeah.
Yeah, it could be. And that's why I sort of make the first entrance of Talia is something like appears out of nowhere, because we see is her just feet landing on a trampoline. So I want it to be her a little bit, kind of magical and also, real at the same time. So yeah.
And what research did you do for the exorcism? Because like she does speak Latin, and then there's like the particular prayers and the process of like using the waters, and then like the coin and the blood smear on the forehead. So what was your research like for this?
Yeah, I read Real Exorcist at one point, the interview from Real Exorcist at one point, and that sort of gave me an idea. I mean, there wasn't any process, but the interview goes, there's a lot of prayers involved, and the distinct between the mental illness and the real possessed people. So I took that idea, and all the process of exorcism is something I made up, but the prayers are real. All the prayers are they're real. So I'm sort of kind of mix and match, if you will, those ideas.
And was anyone freaked out on set for like the scenes, for like exorcism scenes? Because I, for instance, I don't really play with films like that have like specific themes. Like I have yet, and I probably will never see The Exorcist. That, and a lot of that has to do with my upbringing in the church. Like we would be like, no. So like, was anyone like creeped out?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, there's one point, after the prayers finished, like everyone like goes like, ooh, But I mean, it's a film set, so no one's kind of freaked out or something like that.
Should be like, okay.
Yeah, it's all it's all made up.
Right. And you mentioned just no mental illness, so that is again something else that is referenced, because Jay does tell her dad that Helen, she's like, she needs a doctor. I'm not what she needs, because she's like, she will be back, and she's saying, and her dad is saying, well, then if she comes back, then you just have to do it again. But like, I'm just thinking, if she's someone with mental illness, no matter how often she goes back to JE, it won't work, because she needs psychological help. She needs therapy, and
help.
like,
yep.
Yeah. And so like in your research, did you find that was the case? Like for a lot of people, they would prefer to go to the church, they'd be like, go for like prayer sessions and for healing sessions to the church, but instead of going to like a doctor and getting like clinical help.
Yeah, that's right. So these Catholic exorcists are actually paired up with psychologists. So they are not just going out and perform, whatever they want, but actually they're talking to a doctor and determine, whether this person is actually having some sort of mental illness or, actual possessed person. So I thought that was super interesting, because a lot of times, we think, associated with a mental illness, but it can be a possessed, with a demon, actual demon. So I thought that was super interesting, and
yeah. I've had my own personal experiences with like things, and I just be like, I've seen things and I've heard things, and I'm like, yeah, these things do happen. Like demons do exist.
Yeah, and also like for Jae, and her dad, they are sort of talking, like they are sort of hiding inside the house, right? So there's no one will know, there are some sort of they're posing as some sort of doctor, but they're not, and I really love that idea that, this kind of immigrant family is trying to help people, and that idea was super exciting for me.
And like, I'm glad you mentioned like just now them being an immigrant family, because my next question has to do with the fact that Paul refers to her as Justina. And he doesn't refer to her as J.E. when other people are around. Like when Helen and her mom are there, like he calls her Justina. And I know for a lot of people, especially for a lot of people of color, like they have like they're a Christian or a westernized name. And it's always like, my name is Carolyn. Like if I don't have like a cult, like a non-Christian, i.e. Christian or westernized name, but I know for a lot of people, like when they move to like North America in particular, they do adopt a westernized name to fit in, right? Because like the school that I worked at before the pandemic was predominantly Asian, and for a lot of the kids, they're first generation immigrants, and they would have their a Western name and their traditional name. But I'd always ask them, like, which would you prefer me to call? Because a lot of kids, they didn't even like their Western name. They were like, my mom picked this name for me. This is not the one I want. So I'd always ask them, what do you want me to do? Do you want me to call you by your traditional name, or do you want me to call you by your Western name? So could you just talk a bit about that part of it, and like and that kind of, because I also think that plays into their struggle as well. Like she's kind of, because Paul calls her by two different names, she's kind of has two different identities, and is like, he as her dad doesn't know which one to pick.
Yeah, that's super great, because that's a duality theme again, because she's got her Christian name, and her dad calls her that, whenever she performs the exorcism. But after that's all done, she's gone back to her Korean name, Jae, and dad call her that. So that idea comes from from myself, because my name is Stephen, but I've got my Korean name, and and your explanation is great, because when I went to the school, every teacher sort of struggle with my Korean name, so that's why I changed to Stephen. So that comes from my own experience, and for Jae, she has to play these two different lives. One, she's just normal, Korean kids, but at the same time, she needs to perform, crazy exorcism, with the dad, and she's calling, the Christian name.
And so, like you mentioned just now, like the teacher struggling to pronounce your Korean name, and that's something like as a Black person, as a person of color, I always like have a thing with, because I know so many people who've had like similar experiences, like the kids that I worked with at school, but then like just like adults and people that I know in my life who are immigrants, or even if they're not immigrants, they're born in Canada, but their parents gave them like traditional names for like their culture from where they came from, and white people would struggle to pronounce these names, and it'll be like, why? I'm like, I know there's someone that's like, who I think it was not Viola Davis, it was Uza Aduba. I remember an interview, she said, like, you can pronounce Rachmaninoff, but you can't pronounce my name. You're struggling to pronounce my name. My name is only 2 syllables, but you can say Rachmaninoff and and Beethoven and all these names. And then like, even for me, I've had experiences with people who be like, oh, what's your name? I'm like, my name is Carolyn. No, what's your real name? I'm like, it's Carolyn. And then they still pronounce my name wrong. They'd be like, Caroline. Right. I'm like, why? And they'd be like, they'd be like, don't you have an ethnic name? I'm like, really?
Yeah. I mean, that's super interesting, because that I've experienced that, all the time, because my Stephen is my Christian Catholic name, and whenever I go to, to renew my driver license, I had to use my, Korean name, and, they ask, how to pronounce it, and ask, 10 questions with it. So totally,
and it kind of just makes you think of, just like how, I don't want to get this is something I talk about a lot, but like just like colonialism and colonization, and a lot of this And like New Zealand does have that, because like New Zealand and Australia were colonized by the Brits, and like they brought over so many things, but then they are also ostracized and disenfranchised the indigenous people as well. And then it's like, you're here, you've colonized and you've colonialized this country, and like when people of color come, you still want to like find small, people call these things passive aggressive. I don't call them passive aggressive or microaggressions. Like I'm like, no, this is a big deal that you struggle to pronounce people's native names, you know, but it's just like, but we're still expected to work with everything that they give us.
Yeah, I mean, it is. I mean, it's a big subject, but I mean, at the same time, you know, the Asian here in New Zealand is so small. You know, it's a lot of Asians taking, you know, the European names, and is really interesting, you know, because we got Maori name and we are fine with it, but then when it comes to Asian name, it's sort of it's a kind of different mindset. So yeah.
And for you as a filmmaker, because I know I was reading on the Sundance website, like they said that you're turning Breathe into a feature film. And because the film, the short film does have hints of that, is that something you're going to explore more in the feature film, and how all of these things are interconnected?
Yes and no, because this short film is sort of kind of prequel to the feature film. So what I've done is, in the feature film, there's a still Jaehi, but she's now, you know, a little bit older, like 17 years old. But I really want to explore her, you know, what happened, you know, back then, you know, when she was, you know, 12 or 10. So that was the kind of starting point of this short film. So yeah, yes, there's a Jaehi's character in the feature film, and yes, there's Dad character in the feature film, but you know, it's a little bit different. Of course, there's exorcism and crazy things happen, but yeah. But now she's a little bit older, and she needs to kind of team up with another new character to fight, you know, the demon and do some crazy exorcism along the way.
And with fighting, like, so we know she's fighting like demons, and like she's having these struggles with her dad, but also like they're like just before the film ends, like when she's healing Helen for the last time, her hands turn black, and like they turn black like oil. And so could you go into that? Because I saw that as not her being possessed, but this is kind of like the alter ego of herself, because like her dad doesn't see that she's seeing her hands turn black, that this blackness is spreading up to her face.
No one saw that.
And like she's doing this aggressive action towards her dad, like she's pushing him away. And I didn't see that as a negative thing. I didn't see that I was like, oh, maybe she's being overtaken by the demon or whatever. I kind of saw that as like just like a physical manifestation of her power itself. It just that it happens to look dark and creepy.
Yeah. Oh yeah, you can totally interpret that that way. But yeah, yes, she's pulling something out of Helen's body. But that could be a demon, or as you explained, you know, something, you know, she can't control, or you know, it's something she need to fight, you know. So yeah, you're right. You can interpret in a multiple way, but she's pulling out something for sure.
Like,
and struggling. Yeah.
I'm fighting for G. I'm on J's side. Like, don't let him win you over.
No.
Because honestly, I'm really looking forward to like the feature film, because I just want to see what happens, because like you end off the short film so interesting, because like the screen fades to black, and like, all you hear is like her running, and you hear breathing, and that's like where the name comes in. The name of the film comes in, Breathe. And it's just like, I'm just thinking like, is she running from something, or is she running towards something?
Thank you. Yeah. She's running away from everything, but for me, I think that'll be a really temporary thing, because she's just 12 years old and she can't just run away from dad and all this, you know what I'm saying? So she's running away, but not for long.
Yeah, running away is not easy. I've tried running
Not
away once
easy.
and I got as far as to the end of the street and I came right back around.
Exactly. I mean, especially, 12 years old, girl. And I chose that ending because, she's free for something, right? She's finally stand up against her dad for the first time. So I think in my mind, I sort of need that, with the breeze, she feels like it's the kind of freedom that she feels for the first time. So there's breathing and she's running, and she's feeling that brief moment of freedom for the first time. So yeah.
Yeah, but while it might be brief, it's empowering because like she knows that she has the ability now, that she has the ability to stand up to her dad, and it's not something that she'll be easily fall back. It's not a pattern that she'll easily fall back into where he'll, not that he bullies her, but like he just like overlooks her and like doesn't pay attention to what she wants.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
I want to ask you, so for the feature film, how far are you along? How far are you in the process of the feature film? Are you just in script? Are you doing script writing now, or are you in pre-production process?
No, we are writing at the moment, but it's nearly done. With the help of New Zealand Film Commission, they're on board. So hopefully we can get into the production as soon as possible. But I'm super excited about the feature film ideas and how far we are kind of pushing it for the story. Yeah.
I'm looking forward to it because I do want to see what happens now, and I do want to see if Talia is real or if she's a imaginary friend. It would be cool if she was real, though. It would be very cool.
Yeah, it's up to you.
You're just gonna leave that open-ended.
Yes.
Thank you so much for speaking with me, Stephen. Is there anywhere that people be able to find the film online? Because I know some like filmmakers, they put their films on like Vimeo or other sites for the public to watch them.
Not at the moment because we just premiered our film at the Sundance. That was our world premiere, so we'll kind of submit another festival for a time being. But yeah, we definitely will upload to Vimeo or online in coming month, I guess. But yeah, not at the moment.
What other film festivals are you going to be submitting the film to? Because Sundance is the first major one, and I know festival season can last months. Like it doesn't ever really end because I feel like I just did TIFF and I just feel like I didn't stop. So for you, what's the next festival you're going to?
I don't know a specific one, but we are targeting all these kind of fantastic the horror film festivals at this stage. So yeah, hopefully we get one big one and kind of have a good festival round.
Fantasia Fest, perhaps?
Yeah, Fantasia. Yeah, that's on the list, I think. Yeah.
That's a good one. I cover Fantasia Fest and it's always fun. So I hope maybe cool. I'll see your film on the listing there.
Yeah. Hopefully. Fingers crossed.
All right, again, thank you so much for talking with me, Stephen. I really enjoyed it.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, it was great.